And now, allow me to introduce an outstanding leader, a great man, the chair and host of our first roundtable, Joaquín Duato, worldwide chairman of pharmaceuticals for Johnson & Johnson. Thank you. I would like to ask Joaquín and his fellow panelists, Sergio Fuster, Fernando Iroa, Juan Ramón Alais, Ramón Martín, and Javier Asarta, to join Joaquín on stage. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joaquín Duato. I'm the chairman of the pharmaceutical group at Johnson & Johnson, and I've been here in the US for the last 12 years. Thank you for coming tonight. It is always something to have to speak in English to an audience which is practically all from Spain. And while my colleagues sit down, I'll tell you a story about my English. Recently I went to my son's class to read a book on the occasion of his birthday. It was an easy book. It was one of these picture books, and when I was about 3 minutes into reading the books, one of the kids stood up and told me, "Mr. Duato, would you mind to please speak in English?" I hope that you guys don't have the same feeling. So, as I said, I work in Johnson & Johnson for the last 25 years. When I speak to Spanish audiences and I say my name, Joaquín Duato, the first thing people ask me is, "Are you related with Nacho Duato or with Ana Duato?" And yes, I am. I am the brother of Ana Duato. I am the cousin of Nacho Duato. So I am related with them. So we have an extraordinary group of panelists here with me, and I have my little cheat sheet here so I don't make any mistake. And to my left, we have Juan Ramón Alais, who is the CEO of Zoetis. I hope I pronounced it well.
Very well.
Very well. Then we have Sergio Fuster, who is the Senior VP of Marketing of Danone. Then we have Fernando Iroa, who is President and CEO of Palace Entertainment. And I'm always looking at Fernando because having small kids, sometime I'm going to ask you about having some free vouchers to go to some of these parks that you manage.
Anytime.
Then we have Ramón Martín, who is the Global Head of Merchant Solutions in Visa. And finally, Javier Asarta, who is the EVP and CMO of Revlon, who I think also, like me, studied at the SAD in Barcelona, right? Okay.
A few years ago.
Good. So let's start with the beginning, because everything for all of us started with one day taking our luggage and moving into a different country. So why don't we start by talking about how was that first move? What motivated you guys to move for the first time? Why don't we start with you, Javier?
Okay, in my case, I was working for a multinational company with a privileged headquarters in Barcelona, Spain. But I was spending more and more time in the US. Why? Because with the European recession, we had to focus on our American affiliates and business divisions. So I was spending more and more days here, up to 100, 120, and then finally my boss said, "Hey, why don't we move? At least the children have an international experience." When I'm talking moving, in my case, it's a bit complex because we are 8. So as you can imagine, it's a frightening experience when you have to move that amount of.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
But we finally did, and well, it's I must say tough at the very beginning, but a great experience once you're here, and I'm enjoying very much.
What about you, Ramon? What was the biggest challenge in moving?
The repeat changes. My first move was very easy because I was moving alone. I was working for a German company, and they told me you need to work in Stuttgart. And I looked at the map and said that's a great ride, so I started driving. But the challenge is when you start moving family. And mine is not 8. Mine is only 4 and a dog, which is a challenge when you move out inside of that. But the biggest challenge for me has been the repeated move. In the last 12 years, I moved my family 5 times internationally. From Spain to London, London to Florida, Florida back to London, London back to Florida, then back to New York. And you realize of the challenge when your kid says, I'm doing this application, what is our address? Or when you call home and then your father says, which number should I use now? So those the real challenges. It's not the one move, it's moving. Yes, that it becomes really a challenge.
Fernando, and in your case, you work in a Spanish company that works in the US. So what is like to work in a Spanish company in the US?
Well, to tell you the truth, I will tell you the truth. I didn't have much option. Yeah, they told me, Fernando, we want you there. And I say, okay, thank you. What a great opportunity I have. And when I found that the company, the headquarters of the company that we acquired here in the US was in Newport Beach in California, I changed my mind and I said, I'm gonna go there. I will. So I've been very, very lucky. I have moved my family 3 times already. And the challenge is similar to what you are saying. I mean, the first time is funny, it's an experience. The second time they say, okay, now we have friends here and all those things for the children. But the third time is much more difficult. So it's more family related. To me, it's the same. I mean, it doesn't matter if I work here in the US or I work in another country. It's okay. Yeah, but for the family, it's always tough. It's the most difficult thing.
Sergio, you are from Valencia, or from like me. So how do you manage the weather here, particularly this summer?
I'm still wondering if there's going to be summer this year.
Yes, please. We have water parks.
No, in my case, being from I come from a small town in Spain, Gandia, in Valencia, where quality of life is very good and you can live with very little. So I'm a strange animal. Every time I go there and I meet my friends from high school, they look at me and I'm the weird of the group because they all stay there enjoying life in Gandia, and I decided to move away. But in my case, and as the group said, there is no professional challenge. For me, everything has been always an advantage, but you have to make a personal compromise, and the personal compromise is connected to your parents, and it gets aggravated when you have kids. And it never goes, in my case, it doesn't go better. Every time we go to Spain, the toughest moment is the day before the departure back to the States. That's always a tough moment with the family.
Let me change gears now with you, Juan Ramon, because obviously you will be very successful in a US company in the US, which is a challenging thing, as I know, working in Johnson & Johnson, and you are now the CEO of Zoetis. So what type of qualities made you succeed here in the US? What are the type of things that you thought that helped you in continuing progressing?
Maybe there are several qualities that helped me in my process of moving to different steps and becoming CEO of Zoetis. The first thing I think is something that, in my opinion, all leaders should have. It's a focus on results. It is something that definitely is very important. One thing that you also need to learn when you work for a US company is that results are very important, but how you deliver results are equally important. It's something that it's a process of learning that it's important, really, the way that you are delivering results. One other element that, in my opinion, is helping Spaniards in being successful in US companies, it's the cultural diversity that Spaniards in general they have. So we have a culture of many different group of many different cultures in Spain. We are also a small country in Europe that also need to deal with many different neighbors. And this cultural diversity is also very important in American companies. Diversity and inclusion is some of the things that all American companies are promoting. At Zoetis, I have a team which is highly diverse. I have 10 people reporting to me. 6 are female. I have 2 Asian, 2 European, 1 African American, and 1 Latin American. So this is something that definitely kind of diversity. It's even for an American company quite unique. And the third thing that I will mention is also that in general, Spaniards, we manage very well complexity. So complexity is one of the things that is part of the business in any kind of a sector. being able really translating complexity into opportunities and differentiating, because the way that you are solving the complexity is something that definitely has helped me a lot in terms of bringing value to the company.
So, managing complexity, cultural diversity, focus on results. Any other aspects that you think Spaniards that you have to step up? Because sometimes when you come to these companies, you come to work here, I'm sure there were certain areas that you needed to step up, that you needed to increase.
Well, one thing is that I don't think that you can be successful in any American company if you have not long experience in working in American companies. And in my case, I worked for many different American companies in my life. First in Spain, then in Belgium, back to Spain. I think this process of learning how American companies work is very important. But it's not only important knowing how American companies work outside of the US. You also need to learn how the American companies work in the US. And I had the opportunity, before being a CEO of Zoetis, of working for Pfizer in the US for 7 years. And this provided to me really a good understanding of how the people react, how the people behave, what are things which are important for American companies, and what are the things that they can appreciate from any kind of a leader in terms of behavior, experience, perspective, and all the things that, in my opinion, make leaders successful.
Ramon, I see that you want to say something there. Any contribution?
I was going back to the attitude. The one thing that two things. One is, you mentioned complexity and the ability to manage complex situations. I think that something that also is key in being successful is the ability to translate that complexity into something that is simple. Because what you learn is that the sophistication of education that you get in Spain, because of a small country within a large mix of cultures, allows you to really understand diversity in very meaningful ways that then can be translated onto business. So being able to translate complexity into something simple is helpful. And then the second one is really the attitude. Is the can-do attitude that actually helps to drive the results. Being able to see the glass always half full as opposed to half empty really makes a difference.
I think what you were mentioning now, I think it was Einstein who said that simplicity was the mother of sophistication. I fully agree that we have this ability, Spaniards, I don't want to generalize, of making things simple and understandable. And also I want to steal your introduction that I loved, talking about knowledge, values, and attitude. The old Greeks, I think it was Aristotle himself that was talking about logos, pathos, and ethos. That is the logos, the rational part, pathos being the passion, and ethos being the ethical part of the values. And I think that we Spaniards have a good combination of all these qualities, especially passion.
So, Fernando, you lead a Spanish company in the US, so from your point of view, what is what you see? What is what Spanish companies need to succeed in the US? It's a different situation.
Well, first, you need to understand how the American companies work, something that you mentioned before. And that is something difficult because when you try to explain the European partners in any other country in Europe, how the American corporation works here, like with legal issues, with mostly legal issues. I mean, they do not. Most times they don't understand. This is out of their minds. I mean, they say that is impossible. It's impossible that the U.S., a developed country, work in the way we work here. Other thing is that one of the values that we bring to the American companies is negotiation. I think that we are really, really good when we negotiate things, and here the culture in the US is not used to that. I recall when I moved here, when I came 7 years ago to the company, that the first thing I told the people in the company, I'm the only person from Spain in the company, because I wanted to work with with local people. In our business, we deal with 13 million people every year coming to our parks. We have 13,000 employees, and I wanted to work with with local people. And the first thing I told them is, okay, let me meet all the suppliers. Let me meet with all the vendors, because I want to renegotiate everything. And they told me, no, that is impossible. We have a contract. They said, well, I don't care if we have a contract or not. I want to renegotiate this, because we are going to grow the company. We are going to be much bigger than what we are now. And I want to, this is a win-win situation. If they want to continue working with us, they have to change the conditions of things. And they were not used to that. And I can guarantee you that that changed the shape and results of the company. That they were not. I mean, they were shocked when I told them that I wanted to do that. You know. So there are many cultural things, I mean, cultural differences between the US and Spain and Europe in general that because of the difference, when you come and you have a proven success system, that they work here very, very well.
So in your case, let me move into the the things that we don't do that well. You know, we come here. So the other side of it. I can tell you my experience when I first came here 12 years ago, and they do these 360s that I'm sure your companies do too. They would tell me, hey, Joaquin is a little bit directive. You know, he should listen more, or he should recognize more. I was not used to all the time saying, what a great job you are doing. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So he should recognize more. Sometimes they would say, hey, he's very analytical. I thought he was going to be more passionate, no? Instead of being so data-driven. So what is the type of challenges or stereotypes that you faced?
I think in my case, one of the things that I saw is that America is about consensus. And people is used to decide things on big groups all together, and everybody saying yes. And I think in Spanish we are seen as a very direct, sometimes willing to decide and go straight to the point. Also in the use of our language, we tend to go the fast route. So when some Americans tell you, let me be brutally honest, then you know that, all right, finally we're talking. So what in America is called brutally honest is what I think is more our normal way of talking in Spain. So that's one of the things we have to fine tune is how to soften our style and how to make sure that people feel part of the conversation, because it's very much American style, no? The idea of all together and process oriented and big meetings, and we tend to be a bit more individualistic sometimes.
Yeah. And in your case, one of the things, people I think all agree that we are very results oriented, that we are people driven. What about being innovative? Is that something that you would associate with the Spanish management style? Are we innovative, or as innovative as we should be?
In my opinion, Spain has been very innovative in many examples in the history. Maybe what we have not been very successful is selling the innovation. Mm-hmm. But the creativity of Spaniards is clear. Also, the flexibility to adapt to different opportunities is also part of the flexibility of the innovation. In many cases, it's not the innovation only related to product, but maybe finding new ways of achieving the objective. And this is something that we can do very well. Definitely, I think it's also in our case that also we went through a process of many changes in our life. It's also changing maybe the way that we approach different opportunities or different challenges. So this is something that, in my opinion, is helping, and it's helping in American companies for people like us. But also we went to many different experiences compared to many of our colleagues in a US company that always been in the US, because they never had the need really to go outside to develop their careers. In my opinion, this is one advantage that we have compared to some US citizens, that we have limited opportunity really to change and also to embrace change as a way of doing business and generate innovation.
Thank you.
The one thing that I would add, one thing on the innovation, which is probably because of the personal experience, what we become is a little bit more tolerant to risk. Mm-hmm. And that helps on decision making. And when you look at the experiences of executives within the American companies that they haven't moved, is probably because they haven't gone through that personal experience, they tend to be a little more resistant to risk taking. And our balance moves a little bit more towards getting a little bit more risk.
I find myself that I think in Spain we are great innovations and we have great creativity, but there is sort of complex of we don't know how to sell ourselves, which we have to overcome. In contrast with America and ICTs, even with my kids, I think the education in America is great, but everything is very process oriented. So even in second or third grade, they give you a problem, a math problem, and they explain the process that you should follow to get to the result in a way that even for me is shocking. So sometimes I don't know how to do second grade math problems just because I don't understand the process. In our case, it's a much more open culture. I think from very little our education system is very open and it forces you to think differently. And you know, in my work is very connected to innovation and creativity, and I find myself that, for example, advertising agencies tend to be much better in Spain than the ones I can find here. So, you know, this is where you see the power of creativity and innovation. I sometimes think that where we are not good is in selling ourselves outside, and I don't know where is it coming from previous generations, but we feel the idea that we're not going to be good enough, and the truth is that in this area I think we are outstanding.
Let me elaborate a little bit in this comment that we are not able to sell ourselves. One important difference between education in Spain compared to education in the US is how they train their children in presentations, in communication. I see it's a big difference between an American presenting general with a Spaniard presenting. And this is one of the limitations that we have, that we are not selling ourselves, or we are not selling what we are trying to communicate to the audience, because we never had the opportunity of have this kind of training. It's something that definitely I see as an opportunity in the Spanish education to focus much more in this kind of communication skills.
Let me add also, in my experience, when talking about innovation, I cannot conclude that we Spaniards are more creative than other cultures. But I believe that if you have a diverse group for innovation, because if you want to catch new fish, you better fish in different ponds. For this diverse group, the perfect leader is an Spaniard. Thank you. So let me look at this meeting is called Spaniards at the top. So the truth is that there are many Spaniards in the US and in US-based companies, and there are increasingly more. So looking at the reasons that drive that increase of Spaniards in the US, is it the situation in Spain? Is it the fact that the Spanish multinationals have enabled Spanish talent to go abroad? Is it the business schools that we have in Spain, like I said, our alma mater that are pretty good? What would be the reason that we have so many Spaniards at the top? Ramon?
I think it's a combination of all of them. I really believe it's a combination of all of them. And I think that is different by generation. And I consider myself of one of the older generation ones. There's an element on education that we talked about that comes from the really young ages that we didn't have. And we didn't have, or at least I didn't have, anyone teaching me how to speak English. And those things we have to learn. Not that I can do today, but so I think it's a combination of everything. I think that the Spanish industry has been a bit more open through a number of years. That helped. I think that the growth of international businesses for American multinationals also led to seek for Europeans. And I think that a couple of important moves of headquarters companies getting away from Paris and then some of them getting into Spain, that also helped on actually attracting talent. When you get all of those pieces together, then you add a much better programs within business schools, and that helps to actually provide the visibility that we lack, because we are not very self-promoting ourselves, and that helps with visibility.
And is the, were you going to say something, Sergio, on that? No. Is the diaspora of Spanish executives good for Spain, or is not good for Spain? How do you think this could be a positive factor for Spain? Or Fernando?
Well, I think that that is positive for Spain. I think that the more good people from Spain outside Spain, the better for the country, because that will allow people from all over the world to know the reality of the country, to know the reality of Spain, and to know the level of not only executive, but the business schools, the brand, Spanish brand, or whatever. you know, that they are promoting, the government is promoting all over the world. And I think that is always positive. I don't see any negative thing. That there are people that they say, oh, okay, all the good people from Spain are leaving the country. First, that is not true. There are very, very good people in Spain, working in Spain for a Spanish company, from multinational company. But good people, it's good for them to go to other countries because of the reason that I explained before.
What do you think, Sergio?
I will agree with that. I think there's only advantages. You know, there is a stereotype about Spain, and for the reasons we were saying before, when you talk about Spain outside Spain, the first things is, you know, in my case, is the paella, the sun, the party, taking naps, taking 2 hours for lunch, getting late. You know, we have some of those things. Let's recognize it. But you know, those things don't prevent you from being a very interesting professional. And I have happened to all the Spanish that I met outside Spain. They are always outstanding in Spanish, and I think it's changing the image that Spain has in the world. So I think we can all be happy and proud to be contributing to that.
Juan Ramon, what do you think we can do to contribute to Spain, to contribute back?
Well, as a CEO of a U.S. company, I would say that what Spain should do to attract Israelis to invest in Spain, because as you can imagine, the decisions to invest should be based on return rather than emotions. And Spain now, they have the labor conditions which are attractive, especially compared to some of our neighbor countries that definitely the labor laws are very restrictive. France, Belgium. We have the talent in the market that can really maximize the opportunities, commercial, manufacturing, R&D. And this is something that I mentioned in many occasions. Still, Spain, we have a tax environment which is not friendly for companies to invest. And we should be much more competitive compared to Ireland, compared to Switzerland, compared to Belgium, because we are missing opportunities. This is something that the tax authorities in Spain, they need to understand that it's an opportunity for them to really change these tax conditions that will attract much more investments in the country.
Thank you. Any other ideas on how we can contribute back?
Yeah, I think that the heart is already there. When we are taking decisions that may affect Spain in positive, I'm sure that all here would half there already without the start, but then it comes the rational part. And this is where we need also the help of, as you were saying, a business-friendly environment. To not only put the heart and the passion, but also the rational part.
I think it should come in 2 levels. One is the corporate level that we talked about. I think that the press also has a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more coverage on someone managing a portfolio and creating issues in one of the banks than there's about any one of the CEOs. So that, I think that press driving some positives around it is one. And then the second one is the government. There was a period in which there was an 8% unemployment in this country. Then President Obama calls for a forum to think on job creation, and I got invited to participate in that. And I was thinking, in my country there's a 26%, and nobody's asking. So those, I think that the political environment should be promoted and should be pushed to actually seek for this kind of conversation, and the media, the press has a role to play there as well.
Fernando?
Well, I agree with everything that they have mentioned. I think that we can help as expats the economy in Spain through the international market. I mean, through export business. I'm sometimes when I see what and I'm sorry to criticize. I mean, I don't want to criticize here, but sometimes when I see the government of Spain in general, when they promote the Marca España, what they always are trying to promote that, they always invite the same 3 or 4 or 5 same companies, right? And they don't talk about any other thing. And they organize meetings and presentations and events to promote the brand, But at the end, I only see people from Spain in those meetings, right? Because they don't talk to us and they don't ask us what is the best way to promote this in the US, for instance, because we are here, or in any other country. So I think that the IFEX, for instance, the Instituto Español de Comercio Exterior, that they organize many things throughout the world, but they have never, ever contact, for instance, me or anybody else that I know in the country to advise them how to do the thing. There's somebody from Spain doing the organization of the event and inviting people from Spain that is all over the media in Spain, but when you ask people here in the US, nobody knows about it. I mean, I was shocked a few months ago that in a meeting that was held in Santa Barbara, Spain is the third largest investor in the US, the third world investor in the US. If you ask anybody in the US, is Spain investing money? They laugh at you. And they say, what, is Spain investing money in the US? Well, it's not only investing, it's the third largest. It's after UK, Brazil, and then Spain, right? And we do not promote that. And that's something that I think that we could be very useful for the Spanish authorities and the Spanish government and everybody in Spain.
Thank you. And now, Sergio, any final contributions to the topic before we open the discussion to the audience?
I think a lot of things have been said, but I always think that one of the best ways for us to contribute to Spain is to one day come back, which is not, it's a personal choice. But I think inside us there is the idea of one day we're gonna go back, and I think that day, because we've seen other countries and other cultures, we can infuse part of that open mindset in the way of doing business in Spain and change some of the things that have been there for many years, and I think it's difficult to break them from inside. But I think with people that can come, maybe in a few years, to Spain, it can be a totally new culture and way of doing things.
Thank you. So, do we open for questions from the audience? We have one there. Please.
Yes, more than a question. I graduated at IES Barcelona, and I do agree with Mr. Fernando Eiroa. If you don't publicize what Spain does worldwide, you would keep having the image you have right now. And you, I mean, I came here because I was amazed and mesmerized by the fact of every single people in the list and what you do here in the States. And you have to publicize this. You have to talk to your media department and you have to publicize it. Otherwise, it would be considered almost a third world culture.
Thank you. More questions or contributions? Okay. There, we have one there in the back.
Hello, I'm actually an American who just moved back here from Barcelona. So I was actually leading a Spanish company started in 1992 in Barcelona, and we had partners from Germany, Switzerland, Poland, etc. And I got to say, I actually disagree with a lot of things you guys have said. I just don't even know where to begin, but I won't go very much into it. I think your profiles and who you gentlemen are is absolutely fantastic, and you are actually an exception from many of the Spanish clients and the Spanish employees who I had. The reason being because your attitude is very different than many of the people I came across there. And I studied at ISADE in 2008 at Executive MBA, and I've been asked to speak at ISADE many times after that, and I just came from ESA right now and speaking at their executive program. I can tell you that the greatest constraint I see in the Spanish economy, and it's not necessarily a marketing exercise, because you don't want to market a lot of the economic profile, you actually want to PR a lot of the economic profile. Instead, I see a great discontent in the youth. And I started going from advising cosmetics companies in Spain to automotive companies in the north to startups. And I saw the youth felt extremely disgruntled and felt out of touch with the executives that were there in the companies there, the politicians, and they felt a very empty void. In fact, if you look at the numbers in Spain, they are Arab Spring numbers. There's absolutely no revolution happening in Spain. It's surprising. And the ESEX, for example, a lot of other organizations like that, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't see follow-through. I see a lot of starts, a lot of initiatives, but the execution is something that needs a lot of work and a lot of time and attention. Profit per employee, you look at that as a metric across Spain, Spanish companies, across ESEX, across the 97% of the GDP, which is all small, medium-sized pymes. It's absolutely one of the lowest in the world. Profit per employee, I could not hire and fire. I was constrained. I had to use my German holding company, my Swiss holding company, my Polish ones to solve Spanish problems. This is I'm ex-Wall Street, so I was a little bit more aggressive than I probably should have been. And I was more direct than most people I work with, and they pulled me aside and said, this is not the way it works in Spain. So I learned a lot of great lessons and extremely humbling. But at the end, I actually have returned back to the United States just a few weeks ago with my 2 daughters, so it was extremely difficult for me to move there and back, so I feel your pain. But I would encourage you, if there's something you could do, give back to your country, give back to your youth, inspire those children that are in high school that I started mentoring because they were near me in Paseo de Gracia, and I said, look, when you want to come to the US, you want to go to a tennis camp there, or you want to go to a college in the United States, I'll help you get in there, I'll help you write those applications. Because that kind of guidance was really missing. They felt there was too much gray hair telling them, in all due respect, there's too much gray hair telling them what to do, and they said, but that's not what I should be doing. I need better help, I need people who understand my pain. That will solve the long-term issue, which is the attitude of the youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your... Thank you for your contributions, and I think that this may have created a burning platform for the next panel, right? It's giving you some food for thought there. So, we appreciate, no, another, the final one.
Yeah, my name is Maximiliano Vázquez from Centro Español La Nacional. And I was born in Little Spain, which doesn't exist now, but La Nacional does exist there. So one of the things we find is there isn't a concept of volunteer, of being a volunteer for the youth. You know, a lot of businesses, and I'm an entrepreneur, people are interns, they volunteer, they go into projects, they want to do things. But we found at Centro Español, you know, we have to almost twist the arm to get an intern or becaria, someone to volunteer. And I think that's really what's missing, because in American high schools, you know, you volunteer for this club, you do this program, you do this event, you're always volunteering, always networking, and then if you're really good, you get hired, you know, and there's a whole process of business where people become interns and then they get hired. And it's really missing in Spain. I think Spain has to develop some kind of mentoring from the high school. I would agree, from the high school up, high school programs, the kids get together, they volunteer. That concept has to be brought into Spain. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much. I think we have to move on to the next panel. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.